putting on a persona of what we think the world wants to get what we want. It's just only really truly to be loved and loved unconditionally, which is rare for a man. There's so many conditions on a man. Like, you got to have a job. You can't be too soft, but you got to be tough. You got to just be all this whole dynamic of all these things that honestly are bullshit. Like, a true man, in my opinion, is capable of identifying his feelings, and most men are able to do that. I truly believe they are. They just don't know what to do with them.
Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys, the podcast of great conversations with men. I'm your host, Chris Foster, and we're going to explore how we wear this beautiful and confusing mantle of manhood in the 21st century. Look, I get it. In public life, a lot of men are knuckleheads. But in private life, we can be thoughtful and we can be reflective if we have the right conversation, if we feel comfortable talking about our story. And we all have a great story to tell. And we can all learn from those stories. We can learn about who we've been, who we are, and who we want to be. And that's why we're going to have this conversation, so we can learn from other men just like us. And in this episode, we're going to have a conversation with my new friend, Mike Wood. What do you say about a man who is able to meditate and deeply understand and unpack his previous imprints, the things that he learned when he was younger that didn't serve him well, and he needed to move on so that he could serve himself much better and serve his son even more? It's a marvelous yet with a marvelous man. Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys. So, Mike Wood, welcome in.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I married, 6 kids, have a wonderful family. I'm the COO of Jarrett Companies and the founder of Learn to Love Being You. And that's pretty much wraps it up real quick.
Well, you're a COO of a construction company, and you're in the conversation guide that you worked on, you mentioned that you struggled with dyslexia as you were a youngster. But professionally, you're, a triumph in the industry, which is fantastic. So I guess one question that I would have for you is, did you think, or do you think that having dyslexia kind of prepared your mind for a different way of thinking or a different way of moving throughout the world, and maybe one reason why you went into construction?
Yeah. All those reasons, they fit. They fit together really well. I truly believe now that with every curse, there's a blessing. And I think dyslexia was a part of my journey. And, I struggled and did manual labor into my late 20s, early 30s. And, but I always knew I was smart. I could do math in my head. I could solve problems, but I couldn't read past the second grade level at 25 years old. So I really put in a lot of work when I was around 25 years old and got my reading level up a little bit to where I wasn't so embarrassed. I found a job where I was able to get into the office and become an estimator. Became an asphalt estimator. I went from the field into the office as an asphalt estimator, and I struggled because of this dyslexia and reading comprehension, and I still do sometimes. But there's the other side that's been a gift. I can solve problems. I've been very, very astute at just understanding math in my head. I could do math in my head since I was 3 years old.
So isn't that an interesting thing about the brain, Mike, that is one of these curious things where language is a challenge, but math is easy? Yep. I can do math by a calculator. That's how I can do math. And I can do math by an Excel formula. But it's interesting. You just mentioned, I think, a really insightful idea where you said you could read to the level where you weren't embarrassed. Yeah. Like you knew you were smart, but there's the embarrassment. I can believe that these challenge of forming words and mixing letters and stuff, created some doubt and
Yeah.
anxiety, and maybe like you were behind, especially when you're vulnerable years. But did you have conversations with friends and family where they knew it's like, fuck, Mike's really smart. Like he's on it. He's super bright. He just has challenge reading. Were those conversations
Mm-mm.
easy to have, and were they open?
No, no, it was all hidden
Oh,
behind the scenes. I got, like I said, I
mm,
was very good at solving problems. So I would do all my homework. I was a hard worker. I'd do all my homework and get, you know, decent thing. And I would fail every test and I would end up with C's and D's and I got through. I was able to get through school and no help. I think I had a fifth grade teacher who acknowledged because she realized that I was failing tests and she seen how hard I was working. Mrs. Appleby, I'll never forget her, but she pulled me to the side and she read the test to me, and I went from a failing grade to a minus, and she was celebrating me like almost in front of the class, and it was like the first time for me that somebody acknowledged the fact that I was smart. But for the most part, I just hid in class. I was afraid to get called on reading,
hmm.
and it left a lot of core beliefs that were extremely negative, and it hindered me for a long time.
Um, so yay to Mrs. Appleby.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Appleby, for recognizing that. I'm a bit surprised and bummed that it took until your fifth grade. That's a lot of years to feel that embarrassment.
Yeah, and even then, she didn't know what to do. I had a rare form of dyslexia, and she wasn't trained to be able to teach me. She made me feel good about myself and acknowledged it, but I wasn't able to improve my reading. The reading
Sure.
level stayed where it was through high
Eh,
school.
were your parents aware? Did this something that they were figuring out, or did you have conversations with them?
It was just hidden. It just remained hidden. I was kind of my dad left when I was one, maybe 1.5, and my mom struggled to raise 3 kids. She was, we were on
Mm,
government assistance in L.A. or L.A. County, Lancaster and Palmdale, and that town was in a bit of a recession, and there wasn't a lot of work there. But she just did her best she could, and you know, my grades were coming home with C's. The math, I was getting A's and B's. So I was able to get through enough to where, at that time, I just kind of squeaked by.
yeah, and for her, probably like you getting C's in English was the last of her
Yeah,
worries. Like there were so many other things to
yeah,
manage. She's like, okay, you're still in
yeah,
school. Okay, you're going to school every day. Not a
yeah.
problem. You're fine. But it's interesting to me where you say you're a hard worker, which I completely believe. Did you then have to work hard to reestablish a positive belief about yourself where
Yeah.
you knew you were smart, but suddenly all of these public signals were telling you that you
Oh
weren't?
yeah. Yeah, I mean it was in my head. To be honest, those core beliefs when I was a kid that I was dumb, less than, they stuck with me, and the way
Mm.
I understand the mind is that happened in the present moment, and it's always the present moment, and those they just stick with me, and it's one of the reasons that I created my Learn to Love Being You program, is because I learned how to go back to those core beliefs and rewrite them, reframe them with
Ah,
compassion, love, and forgiveness for my kindergarten teacher who got frustrated because I couldn't spell Michael. And she said she got frustrated. And I realized that she was frustrated. The other kids were all spelling their name. And that was the first time I realized that I couldn't go at the same pace as other people, but I could spell Mike. And at that point, I went from being Michael to Mike. And I'm still Mike today and proud of it now. But that moment left a scar, and from that moment on, I had the constant barrage of thoughts that I was less than, I wasn't as smart as everybody, and I was able to, when I was 48 years old, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, go back and rewrite that entire experience. Forgive my teacher because she didn't understand what she was doing, forgive the other kids for laughing, and forgive myself for feeling that way. Reframe that entire thing with compassion, love, and forgiveness, and all of a sudden, that didn't haunt me anymore. Yeah,
wow. I think that is awesome that you were able you were able to rewrite that mental pathway so that it didn't
Yeah,
haunt you. That's really
it
powerful.
is. It's amazing to me that most people don't know anything about this. You know, I've probably rewritten 170, 180 of them. For a long time, I was logging them, and I stopped logging them a while ago. But I'm pushing close to 200 that I've
When you mean them, so what are you
old
logging?
core beliefs that were created. You know,
Wow.
the way that, you think about a young kid, how many times we get in an emotional state, all right? That's what opens up the subconscious mind, and a clear intention is what programs it. So when I was in kindergarten and I couldn't spell like everybody else, and the teacher was trying to get me to write my name, I got into an elevated emotional state when she got frustrated at me. That opened up my subconscious mind to where it could be programmed, and then it got the clear intention is what gets programmed in it. So I was left feeling less than, stupid, not smart. That's what the program was. So it happened in the present moment, and it's always the present moment. The subconscious mind has no concept of time. So we just live with these programs until we go back and change them. And most people don't realize that you can go back and change. So you just live with it. And we all stuff it down, and we don't know why we're miserable. But these are the things that are haunting us. And so when I say I've rewritten 170 of these old core beliefs, that's what I've gone back and rewrote. Is I searched them out, all the other things that happened, and reframed them all with love, compassion, and forgiveness. And what I'd say, move them out of the fear bucket, put them in the love bucket. And my subconscious mind doesn't need to protect me from that stuff anymore. And now I could just move on with happy, free, loving thoughts.
That is, it's such a testament to how you think, again, to your cognitive ability, and B, the power of the mind to not only trick itself, but to rework
Yeah.
itself if you think about how you think about it,
Yeah.
right? The And what's interesting to me, Mike, is that it goes back to your work ethic. You had the diligence to kind of write down all these core beliefs that were unhelpful, that were um, blocking you
Yeah.
from being the fullest, most extent person that you could be. What were some of those? What were some of those beliefs? Can you give us some
Oh, yeah,
examples?
absolutely. I can go on and on. So, one of the ones that's really powerful, and, it's kind of personal, but I don't mind sharing it with you. You know, for the longest time, I've been married for 22 years. Me and my wife just celebrated our 22nd anniversary. Thank you.
Congratulations, well
Thank
done.
you. But with any marriage, it's difficult. You got your ups and downs and whatever. And we're not really fighters. I don't really pick fights and whatever, but occasionally you might have one, right? So we're about 5 years into our relationship, and there's alcohol involved, and we're in a weird situation, and it turns into an argument. And it got elevated, and my first response was, I'm going to leave. I love
Mm.
this woman. She's like my best friend. I didn't want to leave. I woke up the next morning when I was calm. I didn't want to leave. I don't even know why I said that. It turns out over 22 years, we did this about 5 times. Well, when you never fight and then you do, that leaves a horrible scar for my wife, right? Like, we can't even have a fight without you threatening to leave. And I wake up the next morning, I didn't even know why I did that. It turns out, because these core beliefs, if you're feeling something, you could track them to their source. So there's a way to track them to the source. And so it's not like I remember all these old bad things. You experience negative things, and you could track it from that. From a negative feeling, you could literally use that and track it down to its source. So anyway, I tracked it down to the source with help from the guy who taught me how to do all this. And all of a sudden, in a meditative state, I could see my dad and my mom fighting when I was 18 months old. I was in a crib. My mom was pregnant. I could see her belly, and she's pregnant, like 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant, like she's about to pop. And my older brother, who's about 5 years old, is screaming and crying. And my mom's yelling at my dad, why don't you love me? Why won't you stay? Why won't you? She just keeps repeating to him, And at that moment, I created a core belief that an 18-month-old kid figured out if you're married and you're in a relationship, that's what happens. When you get in a fight, you leave. And it's a naive way of thinking as an 18-month-old, but that's what happened. And it didn't come out until I got into a fight.
Until you got into the fight and you didn't ever realize that you had that. And so we know from the science that birds, geese, etc., when they're born, they imprint, right, with their parent quickly. Why wouldn't we have imprints too? Right? You're 18 months old and you see this, you're aware, you're listening. And an 18-month child can sense love, can sense emotion. They might not be able to articulate everything that they're thinking, but they're feeling.
Absolutely.
Right? And when it's almost like, Mike, it's like this movie scene that you see, right? This kid looking at the crib, brother crying, parents arguing, mom's pregnant, so she's totally stressed anyway. Her hormones are going crazy, and she's got 2 other kids, and she's desperate. And you being that place of imprinting that scene without even knowing it, for years later, you're having behaviors based on that scene.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we all are being imprinted, to use your words, and what I call them is core beliefs. Like they become a belief system. It's how we live. It's what we believe is who we are. And, like I believed I was dumb. Why would I have all these thoughts that I was stupid, that I was dumb, if they weren't true? It was a belief. And the way the subconscious mind is amazing. It's the most powerful supercomputer on the planet. And it's like we drive, we don't even think, right? Like how many times do you drive home and you don't even think about driving, but were you unsafe?
Oh, I was just driving.
But you got home and you didn't get yourself in an awkward spot. The subconscious mind is driving for you. Like we're driving unconsciously. And the thing about the subconscious mind is it's designed to keep us safe. It's actually our best friend, right? It's the reason why it held on to those childhood memories of mine. It was to keep me safe. It was trying to protect me from another situation where I was going to feel stupid. So it was constantly on high alert. Like, hey, don't put yourself in that situation. You don't want to feel that way again. It was trying to protect me.
Right. It was. And when you're 18 months old, it's trying to protect you emotionally so that you can actually get through and process that moment without yourself freaking out, because you could understand the feelings, but you couldn't understand the situation.
Yeah. And so as you're going through all this stuff and you're getting this information, you're creating core beliefs at a very young age when you don't have the capability to process this information. And so we have all these negative core beliefs that no longer serve us, that we've outgrown them. When we get into emotional situations, we do our best to comfort ourselves. And this is the subconscious mind's way of doing that. It's like, hey, I understand this. I know what's going on. Now we understand this is the way life is, and we're going to work with this. And this was a scary, fearful moment. I'm going to try to protect you from it. And here's why, Chris. It was designed to keep us alive. So let's imagine there's a 2-year-old little boy walking along the edge of the pool and he falls in. Okay. He's almost drowns, gets water in his lungs. He's freaked out. Somebody comes along, saves him, gets the water out of his lungs, but he's traumatized. The subconscious mind is designed to remember that. So the next time it sees a pool, it stays away from it. So you don't fall into that same thing. That's what the subconscious mind is trying to do. The problem is it'll also protect us from things we don't need to be protected from, because we're creating some of these situations that we don't understand, and we're creating core beliefs that don't make any sense. Because I was 18 months when I created that thing. That was not a good core belief, right?
Clearly, it doesn't serve you.
Exactly.
Now. I love the way you phrased that. These core beliefs at one time were designed to protect, but now they don't serve. And more so than that, now they actually not only not serve, now they actually harm and block, right? It's moved from the being passive to actually being actively hindering you. my wife was talking about this recently, where she said she's looking for ways to expel things that do not serve her to make room for things that do
Yeah.
serve her, as kind of like this new stage in our life. And I thought that was such a really poetic way to say that. But you just touched on that, where we as humans probably have these, as you call it, core beliefs, call them imprints,
Yep.
whatever. Some of those imprints serve us well,
Yeah.
but some of them really
Yeah.
don't.
Absolutely. It really depends on the on the situation and the understanding that you had in an emotional state. Like, so when I go
Mm-hmm.
back to an emotional state and I rewrite a core belief, I'm big brother sitting with my former self, right? And I'm giving myself the
Right.
compassion I needed during that moment. Oh, look, mom, she was struggling so bad. She was
Yeah.
struggling. She was pregnant. Her security was leaving. The love of her life was leaving. She was in a horrible place. We need to forgive mom and allow her, some grace here, because yes, we weren't in a safe place where we were understanding what was going on, but that's not her fault. She was in a terrible position. So you give yourself that compassion and forgive my dad and forgive every part of that situation, to where, you know, now all of a sudden it's not that fearful memory that needs to be recorded by the subconscious mind to protect me. Once you move it
Right.
out of the fear bucket, the subconscious mind will just
Well,
let it go.
we'll let it go. You just said something interesting, where like the mechanism, these two emotions are maybe they're choices. You said it was
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness, and love and compassion,
Yes.
right? Where as I'm getting older, it was funny. I was mentioning this to a friend of mine. I'm much kinder with my parents, and my memories of them. So my folks split when I was 5. There was lots of
Yeah.
gobbledygook, um, and and I look back though at my parents at that young, because now I'm older than they were when
Mm-hmm.
that stuff happened, and
Perspective.
and I can be a lot. Right, I can be a lot more forgiving of them. I can be a lot kinder and
Yeah.
gentler to them, and acknowledge that they made mistakes and stuff like that. But who doesn't? Um, and that actually was very helpful for me. I didn't take the exercise that you did, which is a great idea, of writing down these beliefs or these imprints that we might have. When did you start doing that?
So I kind of went through a really bad time because I suffered with anxiety and depression all the way to 45 years old. And I'd achieved
Yeah,
everything in life that I wanted.
but it doesn't surprise me that if that doesn't surprise me, understanding now your severe
Mm-hmm.
dyslexia, the embarrassment, maybe there's self-loathing, or there's self-hatred, or there's punishment of yourself. Why am I so dumb when I know I'm not
Yep.
dumb? I'm really, really smart, but why is this so challenging
Absolutely.
for me when it's easy for
Yep.
everybody? Right. And they all think I'm stupid, but I know I'm
Yep.
not. Right. I can imagine that being extraordinarily confusing as your first imprints, and all the programming that goes on in your brain during your formative years of teenagehood and young
Yeah.
adulthood.
Yeah. And the way that society is, it tells us, all right, you're going to be happy when you get this, or you go to school and you get a good job, and then you get a house and you move out on your own, and then you find the right woman, and then you have kids, and then you always think that's the
But
next thing.
especially if you're a man,
Yes.
because I guarantee you, when you were in middle school and you were in high school, no one wanted to hear you talk about your feelings.
No, rub some dirt on it, boy. Get back in the game. There's no problems. No.
Throw some dirt on that wound and get back
Exactly.
in.
You can't talk about that stuff. No.
Right.
Yeah. So you know, I ran into a wall, and I told my boss, and I don't know if he truly understood the gravity of how much I meant it, but I told him I was going to quiet my mind by any means necessary. And I meant it.
Mm,
And I had
mm.
gone through a rough time at work, and we'd fixed all these problems. And I realized a lot of them, I could find blame in myself. And so when I turned that focus inward, I just went into meditation, and I mean, meditating for 2 or 3 hours a day. I was consuming books on Audible, 5 to 10 a month. I just went on this massive search of information and going inward. And then I stumbled across, the universe handed me Chris Hancock. Has been one of the most amazing gifts of my life. He's an energy therapist, but he's a traditional therapist for 15 years. And he had what he calls a deep, dark night of the soul, where he was at his worst and he had a break. And on the other side of that, he could no longer do traditional therapy, and he went into holistic things. And so
Sure.
Chris teaches a lot of the stuff that I've learned. And so I go into this, and this is basically all stuff that the Buddhists have been teaching for 2,500 years, right?
Sure.
They've taught people how to go back, rewrite old core beliefs, whatever phrases you want to use it, but they've taught people how to do this. They teach you how to track them down. Like, all this stuff is the writing program that I created new, and did I create it? Yes. But it's using all the stuff that the Buddhists have been giving us for thousands of years.
Absolutely. But that's actually, to me, the greatest way to learn,
Yeah.
right? Is that you understand these concepts and you understand these philosophies that have been around, but you rewrite it and re-express it in a way that's meaningful and that you understand. And when you can do that, it means that you're actually learning. Like,
Exactly.
right? That means that you're learning the material because you're putting it in your own words, right? You're making it work for
Yeah.
Mike. And the idea of, the Eightfold Path, the idea of understanding, the Bardo, the idea of understanding these Buddhist concepts are, I think, that oftentimes overlooked.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that I know that has read the Tibetan book of Living and Dying, right? Except
That's
for
pretty
you.
impressive. No, I haven't read that one. Come on, I haven't read that one.
No,
it's still just you.
It's actually right. Okay. I guess it's just me. The Tibetan Book of Living. So I highly recommend
That sounds
it,
awesome.
right? Because, well, it is, because what it does is it talks. It's really interesting because it's echoed also. And if anyone listens to my show, I've been on this kick about reading Marcus Aurelius and some of the other Stoics. What is interesting is that there is these commonalities of thinking and of looking at the world. And Aurelius was before the Buddha. He's about 2,500 BCE. Buddha's about 500 BCE,
Yep.
right? But the idea is, Marcus Aurelius was saying, well, like when I was a boy and went to a young adulthood or a young man, my boy died. The boy in me died, and I moved on to the young man, right? But was I sad about that death or that transition? And so, in the Buddhist, doctrine of living, passing on and maybe being reborn, going to another life and keeping moving up in lives where you get to this place, perhaps you're a bodhisattva where you can decide that you're going to come back and be of service, but you're at this really high level. These are just these transitions. And so the idea of that, it's an end to fear, right? There's no reason to fear death because you're moving on and you're progressing. For you, when you started to understand what Chris Hancock was saying, first of all, a couple of things. One, I find it fascinating that Chris Hancock had to go through the wilderness and hit the dark spot to come out the other side, which is, Mike, I mean, that's the age-old story, right? The hero goes into the wilderness, it comes out transformed, and then can tell the tribe, here's what I've learned, right? What made you choose him? You said the universe gave him that, but clearly you were open. So what was that like?
So one of the things I learned really quickly when I was meditating, I found chakra meditations, and I started to be able to feel energy in my body, and I was fascinated with it. And so I remember putting the first crystal in my hand, and my hand started vibrating. I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. And then I did some chakra stuff, and I started to feel those energies in my body. It was a complete perspective change for me, where I realized I'm an energetic being having a human experience. Like, there's way more going on inside of me than I realized. And if I'm energy, then do I really die? Like you hear religion and dogma and all these things, like, come on now, this is fact. Like I could feel these energies in my body and they're doing things. And so when I had my heart chakra open up, and I to the point now where I could feel all the energies in my body. I could almost on demand, I could summon them and I could feel them. So
Wow, you're practicing
I
hard.
am. Yes, I am. And I mess with them on a regular basis. It's just become like a daily thing that I do. But in the early stage, the world kind of called to me because it was energy therapy. That's what Chris Hancock called his original work that he was doing at that time. He's morphed a little bit over the last 4 years since I've known him. And I wanted to do energy work. Like, okay, energy work. Yes, let's go.
Sure.
Cause I was very, very interested. I just was immediately pulled to it. There was not any way I wasn't going to see him. He's kind of expensive,
Right.
and I didn't care. He could have charged me $1,000 a session. I would have still went.
Sure.
So yeah, that was, the universe starts to speak in synchronicities when we quiet our mind. And that was just one of the thousands for me as I've been able to quiet my mind.
So tell me about that. A lot of people have a really hard time. Would you consider this transcendental meditation?
So transcendental is a little different.
Something different.
So transcendental is trying to get to a place of no thought. All right. Transcendental is going to a place of nothingness and experiencing the nothingness. But that is so hard to do because immediately we're flooded with thoughts. The single point of focus, you could be surfing and that's meditating. If you got single point of focus on that surfboard and the water and what you're doing, people they don't realize it, but they could be in their garage working on an engine. I would call that meditating. If you're not thinking about anything else in the world except for how to get that engine back to right, and that's your single point of focus. So I would say anything that is a single point of focus, I would consider meditating. And the more we practice, it's just like if I want to go run a marathon, I'm not going to be able to do it today, right? I'm going to struggle. I probably can't even run around the block, but if I practice and practice, we can get there. Now, the first 3 weeks of my program is about this. It's about learning how to take control of your mind and learning how to bring your attention into the present moment, because that's the only place we truly ever find peace. When we're suffering, it's because our thoughts are messing with us and they're pulling us into the future, some worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, or we're dwelling on the misery of the past. And that brings cortisol and it puts you in the fear bucket. And then now all of a sudden that cortisol is running on, keeping you on high alert, regurgitating the same thoughts. And it makes you feel miserable. The cortisol makes you sick. It makes you eat to get you some dopamine to stop feeling that. Like it just keeps going.
Like this,
yeah.
It's like, right. It's, it's so, and what's amazing to me, what I love what you said about this, Mike, is that you just were breaking down what actually happens as to why people end up feeling and looking and bad and being unhealthy and having bad habits. And, oh man, I need to have that drink right now because I need that hit of dopamine because I'm feeling really bummed. And the human body, and I'm no expert, but from what I've read and understand, the human body seeks homeostasis, right? It seeks this equilibrium, not just in your physical frame, but also in your brain, right? It seeks this place of saying, okay, I'm not afraid. I'm not in a flight. I'm not overly hungry, but I'm not overly satiated either. I'm not, right. I'm at this good place. It's very hard for us to get there.
Yep.
I also think it's very hard for men to get there. You're one of the very few men that have talked about being, you said you were an energy, having a human experience. Yep. So here's I thought was so fascinating about what you said. I just spoke to a guy yesterday, Jonathan Aisley. He said, I said, so tell me a little bit about yourself, like the beginning of the show. And he says, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And I was like, oh, let's go. Let's go. Yeah. Right.
That's
right.
Great.
Because Right. Because I think that it is very rare for men to disclose these types of
Yeah.
feelings, right? And perceptions. I guess I'll ask you, why do you think that is?
That it's the same reason why women, are wearing makeup and doing stuff to their bodies. It's because we're told we're only valuable if we're strong. Women want the bad guys, so maybe we got to be a little extra tough, and we're putting on a persona of what we think the world wants to get what we want. It's just only really truly to be loved and loved unconditionally, which is rare for a man. There's so many conditions on a man. Like you got to have a job. You can't be too soft, but you got to be tough. You got to just be all this this whole dynamic of all these things that honestly are bullshit. Like a true man, in my opinion, is capable of identifying his feelings, and most men are able to do that. I truly believe they are. They just don't know what to do with them. Like, okay, I got feelings. They're great. Now, what are we going to do now? I know about them, but what do I get to do with them now? And that's why I'm.
What am I going to do with this feeling? I'm going to go punch a wall.
Exactly, because they don't know what to do with it.
We'll be right back.
Chris, I got a 10-year-old boy. He's inherited the dyslexia, and
okay, I was asking, it's heritable from what I understand.
It sure is. So I actually have two boys that struggled with it. The first one, I wasn't able to protect him, but we did get him to schooling. So by the time he got out of high school, he was able to read at a high level. Because people understand now. Understand dyslexia.
Yeah, they understand now. Yeah. So my uncle suffered from dyslexia, and I think my grandfather did. So my grandfather, Frederick Gordon Foster, was like old school, like 1940s, 1950s grandfather.
Yeah. Oh, he's
right?
tough.
And like tough dude. And very prideful, very smart. He was probably genius level intellect. Worked at Kodak and did camera work for the spy planes.
Oh, wow.
It was just crazy smart guy. But we think he might have been a little bit dyslexic because the reading wasn't his thing. He was really brilliant with finance. He was brilliant with math. He understood all that stuff. So his son, my Uncle John, was dyslexic. And had huge challenges because this is growing up now in the 40s and the 50s, and nobody knew at all. I mean, heck, when you grew up, they didn't even know, that was, right? Yeah. So there was no support. So he ended up having so many challenges and problems and doubt and anxiety and all this stuff. He ended up being incredibly successful running a general store in Twin Mountain, New Hampshire. It's called Foster's Crossroads. Yep. And he, like you, could do all of the math in his head because he was selling everything, snowmobiles, renting snowmobiles, oil, ice, snacks. I mean, it was a general store like on the side of the road to get gasoline and stuff like that. But he had everything in his head. Like he knew everything about all this stuff. He could fix anything, build anything, and I was... Because, I mean, I was a young kid that I would go see him and they were like, oh, your Uncle Johnny's not that smart, blah, blah, blah. They would kind of dog him a little bit. But I went up to him and I was just in awe of this guy. I was like, shit, bro, what can't you do? Like you can do everything, right? So much even more than my dad could do with all this stuff. So to your point is that, and I didn't mean to take that over, but it is heritable. Yes. So with you knowing that, how did then you prepare for your children and have those conversations with them?
My older, the 19-year-old, 20-year-old now, he was a little more difficult because I didn't know how to truly help him. All I could do was love him and tell him I was the same thing. I be compassionate with him. But once there's a program that's set in, because he redid first grade, once the other kids
Yeah.
realized he was older, he redid it. In comes all the stuff. He went from being the happiest. We called him our love child because he was just so sweet and happy, outgoing, and he just went inward. And
Oh,
so he's coming out of it now. But, I didn't
good.
know what to do with him. But now I've got so many tools, and this little 10-year-old boy, his dyslexia is way worse than mine or my other son, and he's kicking his butt. And it's amazing, and it's been the greatest
That's
gift.
great.
And so anything that we identify with is going to be a source of pain. So your wife was talking about that earlier, and it got me, my brain started getting triggered. But I've been able to teach my son, like, anything, like, you're a Christmas tree, all right? But the problem is you got cut off from nature and brought in the house, and you started putting decorations on you. Every one of those decorations, you now think that's part of you. None of those decorations are you, but every one of them is now a source of pain. So when I first showed this to my son, Tucker, the youngest, he came home and he was upset about soccer. The bigger kids were doing this and whatever, and he wasn't as good as them or whatever. And I was like, Tucker, you're attaching yourself soccer to your Christmas, your ornaments, and you're putting that on the tree. And now your subconscious mind is trying to protect you from being a good soccer player or any kind of a threat that says you're not a good soccer player. It's going to cause you pain, because he was all upset. So simply taught him how to say, hey, I'm not a good or a bad soccer player. I just play soccer. I'm so much more than a soccer player. And now all of a sudden he just took that
Right.
off of his Christmas tree, and he can go play soccer. Whether he wins or loses, he doesn't care. He's just having fun.
Because he enjoys it.
Yes.
Right. And that is a beautiful metaphor. And that by putting it as a Christmas tree metaphor, it makes it really appealing to children, right? That I think that was very, very smart of you. That's a really thoughtful metaphor.
So my
Visually.
son has become my teacher. Like, he has become my teacher.
Yes.
So with his dyslexia, we do the same thing. Like, he's not a good reader or a bad reader. He just reads. It's so, because he's going through the same stuff I did. But now when he just says, he knows when he starts to get upset, he just gets up, walks away, says that out loud, because he gets embarrassed to say that out loud. He'll go, get his mind right, come right back. And now he's just happy. Whether he could read it or not, he doesn't care. And the emotions that are involuntary leave the building, because they're coming from your subconscious mind trying to protect him. Now they're not trying to protect anything, because he's not a good reader or a bad reader. He doesn't.
He's just a reader, just like everybody else, and he's going to read his way. I love that you're taking this and creating teachable moments.
Oh yeah.
For your children.
Yeah, and they're teachable for me too, because I learned all this stuff, and I practiced them with myself. But as I'm showing it to my son, I got another one for you. So he comes upstairs one day, and he's terrified. The boogeyman's going to get him. He's 7 years old. So this is about almost 4 years ago now. And he had never done this before. I mean, he is hysterical. He's crying. The boogeyman's going to get me. Oh my God. He's just.
Did he actually call it the boogeyman?
He's saying monsters in his closet. People are going to come through his window. Like, he's just, he is in it. And nothing really is coherent. And I said, Tuck, I know what's wrong, because I had just started doing a journal, a gratitude journal. And I said, I know what's wrong with you. And he's like, what? And I said, you're in the fear bucket. And he said, okay, so how do I fix it? I said, we got to get you out of the fear bucket and get you into the love bucket. And I know how to do it, but you got to play a game with me. He's like, he's still frantic, but like, okay, yeah, I don't want to feel like this. So I said, all you have to do is play a game with me, and I'll help you. It's really easy. All you have to do is say what you're grateful for. And he starts going, but I don't know how to do that. Tuck, it's real simple. I'll go first. And so I go first. I said, I'm grateful for our house. I love this house. It's amazing. It keeps us safe. And I'm grateful for our house. And he said, okay, but I don't know what I'm grateful for. I said, well, what about your cats? Oh, yeah. I'm grateful for Leroy and Nala. And so what happens is there's a chemical in your brain, or there's a switch in your brain, like a light switch. It's going to either produce cortisol or oxytocin based off of the content of your thoughts. And when he came upstairs, he was having fearful thoughts, and it was overwhelming cortisol and just on a reel. He was not going to get out of that. But if you change your thoughts, the content of your thoughts will, after 2 minutes of compassionate, loving thoughts, it'll switch over and start producing oxytocin. So as we're going back and forth, saying what I'm grateful for and he's saying what he's grateful for, after a couple minutes, I realized, wait a minute, he's not upset anymore. After 5 minutes, he's kind of smiling a little bit. After 10 minutes, he's laughing. After 15 minutes, because I was just amazed. I was like, holy moly, this works way better than I thought it did. Because it would make me feel better in the mornings, but it just completely transformed this kid. And after 2 minutes, it starts producing cortisol. And so he's literally drug-induced happy. After 15 minutes, I said, Tuck, you're good now. Now you got to get back in bed. He went back downstairs, got in bed, never heard another word from him, and he went to sleep. And I was like, wow, my mind was blown.
Wow. Well, you know what? But that is the power of the mind. First of all, kudos to you, Dad. Well
Thank
done
you.
for not buying into the emotion and freaking out and putting more fuel into the fire, right? And putting gasoline on what was happening in front of you. So A, kudos to you. But B, I think what's really interesting is you just said that he went into a drug-induced happiness, but it's actually our own mind's drug. Yes. It's our own chemistry that did that. And we talked earlier about that homeostasis. Like the mind wants to get to homeostasis. Yes. It's just that it doesn't know how because it's all caught up in this stuff. And it's only then when you're caught up in this stuff, you're only looking about the stuff you're caught up in, right? So do you have you shown your children meditation? Are they ready for that?
So, my older kids, as I got to a place where I'm healing and I'm feeling this amazing transformation in my life, all I want to do is help everybody. And my biggest lesson I got slapped right in the face with was, if you can't help anybody who doesn't want help. So my kids, they don't want no help, I can't give it to them. You know what I mean? I could love them and I'm still their dad, but my kids are grown. I got 30-year-old, 29-year-old, 27.
Well, they'll be ready when they're ready.
Exactly. And so the only one that's really reached out and said, hey, is Tucker. So my youngest one, he still comes to me and whenever he has an issue with the day, he's like, I got to talk to Dad, and he runs his mom out of the room and we chuckle. And
I love that. So how old is he
10.
Now? So I thought he was 10. That is such a beautiful and precious age for him actually to be, to have these imprints now of you as Dad, but also too, Mike, he's being imprinted upon a model of manhood that's going to be really different than a lot of other men out there.
Man, he's going to be, so he's got the gift of math as well. But his dyslexia is way off. Like you still have a hard time understanding Tucker. Like his speech is slowly, but his gift is going to be emotional intelligence. He's got this high range of emotions, but every time he has an emotion, he deals with it. He either deals with it himself because he knows how, or he'll come to me and be like, hey, I'm dealing with this. I don't know what to do. And then we'll work through it. I'll give him the tools that I've used, and then he'll deal with it, and he listens, and not 100% of the time does he even want to listen. But when he comes to me, he's got an open mind, and he could work through any one of the issues, and he trusts me. And so that guidance he's just so far ahead of most everybody that I've ever met in my life, to be honest.
Well, you love that. You want your kids to be better than you, right? So you're the only one that I know who's said that their child is in touch with their feelings enough to say, I've got these feelings and I don't quite know how to deal with them. I got to tell you, if we could have had those conversations with our teenagers, or people out there, and men especially, fathers could have that conversation with their boy teenagers who are feeling all these emotions and want to jump in a car and drive fast, or want to hit somebody, or want to do something stupid, like stupid kids being stupid. For them to stop and say, I've got all these feelings and I don't quite know what to do with them. Can you help me process and talk about these
Yep.
feelings, that is astonishing.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I refer back to my program for a second. Like in the first 3 weeks, I teach people how to just take manual control of their brain, because when all those emotions get going, you if you engage with them, which is how the brain's supposed to be working. The thinking mind, when you engage with it, it's an amazing tool that could do amazing things. But when it just runs amok, now it's causing pain and destruction and all that stuff. So when the emotions come, the negative emotions come, the ability to detach, catch it before on the rise and go, wait a minute, I don't need this, and be able to detach. I teach people how to detach, give them tools like box breathing and gratitude journals, and just going outside and stopping and smelling the roses, just closing your eyes for a minute and trying to identify as many smells as you can. What that it does several things, but it quiets the noise in your head, it turns off the cortisol, starts producing oxytocin, but it also brings 100% of your attention into the present moment by using your senses. And now all of a sudden you could separate from what you said a second ago, that kid that wants to rage and go punch the wall or go drive fast or do something silly. It, that emotion has already got a hold of them. Eckhart Tolle calls that the pain body.
Right.
If we could detach from those emotions before it takes control over us, once it's taken control of us, you got to let it all run its course, and because there's nothing you're going to talk, and you can't talk somebody down. But with practice, you could catch it before it ever starts to take hold. And box breathing is by far the most powerful tool that anybody can use if you're having a hard time managing your emotions. As you start to feel emotions, or if you're feeling frustrated, start practicing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold again. It's just like a box with your breath. Inhale, exhale.
Got it.
And as your system will all calm down, and you're going to let your system know, wait a minute, whatever emotion is going on, you're not in control. I am. The true self is in control of this situation, and we're not going to get all crazy here. And after 2 minutes, you'll be so calm that emotion is just going to go away, if you could catch it early enough before it takes a hold. And the repetition of that is extremely powerful. I'll tell you a quick story about the Navy SEALs, which created that box breathing technique. And I know the Buddhists use a form of that as well. But
I didn't know the Navy SEALs formalized the box breathing.
It's actually called Navy SEALs box breathing. And the most amazing thing about it, these guys that get through the Navy SEALs, they're the most amazing people on the planet. And they're big, they're small, they're skinny, they're muscled up. Like, there is no commonalities with them. The Navy SEALs needed more Navy SEALs to do things in the world, right? They wanted to go recruit more. Mm-hmm. And so they interviewed everyone that had ever made it through the program, because it's like a 2.5% success rate. 300 people show up and only 6 or 7 get through. They found only 2 things that they all have in common: compassion for your fellow man and mastering the breath work that they teach you. And the reason why both of these things are so powerful is because if you and I, Chris, are in day 10 of this and we haven't slept, they're working us out 10 hours a day, they're halfway through our meals, they're kicking our meals out, we're miserable, right? And we're sore. If we're running, and we became friends in this process, right? And we're running, and you say you're going to quit, you're tired of this, you can't do it no more. If I'm running alongside with you and I'm like, no, Chris, I will carry you across the finish line, my compassion for you will turn off my negative thoughts that are telling me to quit, and I'm just going to keep running. So compassion for you is going to turn my brain off and keep me going. So compassion is one thing that will push somebody to that finish line. Because if our brain tells us to quit, we're going to quit. Mastering the breath work will also quiet your mind, and you'll just keep going. And so those 2 things, when you calm the voices in your head, because if we're in something miserable like that and we want to make it to the finish line, if the voices in our head are telling us to quit, it's not going to be long before we quit. Right. So being able to quiet that, and then the body will just keep running. The body could do amazing things. It's the mind that's going to stop us. And that's what,
Mhm.
all the Navy SEALs all have in common. They have that inner strength to quiet that mind and just keep going despite all the fear that's around them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting uh, definition of strength,
Yeah.
right? It's a really interesting definition of men's strength. So it's not, you know, the toughness or the push it all
Yep.
down and stiff upper lip, and it's actually the strength to quiet your mind
Yes.
so that even trauma that happens to you then doesn't manifest and haunt you later. I spoke with a brilliant man, Rand, um, and he had a really traumatic upbringing in real deep poverty when he was younger, and then to get out of poverty he went into the Marine Corps, and this was in 1966. So he went into Vietnam and was a combat soldier,
Mm-hmm.
and for years and years and years just stuffed all that stuff
Yeah.
down. But it came out when he started to drink a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, challenge, right? He never just got to the place where he could quiet the mind. And I think that what I'm so impressed about you, Mike, is that you were able to start mastering your own mind, and you found the tools that you needed to master your own mind. Of course, now then you can use those tools to help
Yeah.
others,
That's the goal.
and you're starting with your boy,
Yeah.
which is where you start with, right? I'm just so impressed. I'm so
Very
impressed with you.
kind words. Uh, you know, I've learned to take every experience, including this one. I'm learning from you as we sit here. You're highly intelligent. You know far more about Buddhism than I do. Um,
I don't think
but
so.
it's just if we can get ourselves into that state, everything becomes our teacher. The universe will start to speak to you. When everything gets quiet. They got
If you let
Yeah, if you
it.
let it. Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla, all of their inventions came to them at night when they were asleep, when the mind was off, when the mind was quiet. And then they would wake up and have the idea there, but they went to sleep with the intention and they woke up with this idea. They both have accounts of them developing these amazing things. When the mind is quiet, that's when our everything works at its highest capacity. That's when we are at our optimum, just like the Navy SEALs, when we're able to quiet it down to the true self and then just react in the moment. We're infinitely more intelligent than we think we are. We try to figure it all out instead of just being here in this moment and reacting. And we don't have to think. You could go for hours and never think about anything if you're able to keep yourself in the moment. It's very difficult, but
Very difficult to do that. When you see professional athletes, like Michael Jordan, he talked about being in the zone.
yes.
I had the privilege and pleasure of attending one professional basketball game in my whole life, and it was a
Oh,
Bulls
that's a
Lakers
good
final.
one.
Like, right, like in
Oh,
Chicago,
wow.
and it was crazy. My friend's dad got his tickets, and we were at the top row, looking all the way down. And if I was an alien and I knew nothing about anything, and I was looking at this game, I could see Michael Jordan was different than
Yeah.
everybody else. He just was physically on the court, moving around, his spatial awareness. It looked, to your just phrase, Michael, he was not
He wasn't.
thinking.
He's
He
quoted
wasn't.
he's quoted as saying he never cared if he missed a shot. Who does that? Like nobody thinks
Right.
that way. He was quoted as saying, I didn't care if I missed. I was just going to take the next shot. I didn't care if I missed. And that's the attitude we had. It's like my son. He doesn't care if he's a good reader or a bad reader. When you get in that state of mind, everything, the infinite intelligence of the universe comes through you. And now all of a sudden you could do things like that. Kobe Bryant, he scored 81 points in 3 quarters in an NBA basketball game. And they're interviewing him after it. He didn't remember any of it because he wasn't thinking. He was out of his mind.
He wasn't thinking.
There was,
actually, it's so funny you say that, where you let the universe work through you, right? And you just said it earlier in our conversation, where you're an energy being that's having a human experience. There are so many things out there that we have a hard time putting words to, right? The Lao Tzu would call it the Tao, right? Right. This thing where Marcus Aurelius calls it the logos, right? The thing that flows through if you pay attention, or maybe if you don't pay attention.
That's where it's at. The not paying attention is just to settle into it and just do nothing. Because I love it. So Michael, Chris, I have had it been flowing through me. All right. So it happens to me quite a bit now, especially in energy sessions where I'm working with somebody, doing core belief sessions with them. Right. And it started happening to me about a year and a half ago. And I'd be sitting across from somebody and my heart chakra is opening up and I'm just kind of giving myself to the situation, trying not to think, not let my ego get into what I would call a therapy session, right? Helping somebody with something. But my biggest issue that I've always had is my ego get in the middle of it, and it makes it awkward or weird or whatever. And so if I just relax and go into nothing, it's just beautiful. I'm just existing. There is nothing else. I don't need to be good at this. I'm just here. And now, and all of a sudden, words are coming out of my mouth and I have no idea what I'm saying. And it's exactly what they need to hear. And I'm like, I didn't even know why I said any of that stuff. And they're going, I can't believe you just said that. And I'm basically picking them apart, and it's not me doing it. What's one of the most famous producers? Oh, his name just slips my tongue. But he wrote a book it's called The Creative Act. And he's one of the most famous record producers of all time. And he produced Run DMC in his apartment when he was in college. And he's been every major musician on the planet. He's worked with him. And he got inspired, and he learned how to do what I'm talking about. He'd get himself in a place of no mind, and the music would just flow through him, and it still does. He's able to get himself in that free-flowing state where stuff just flows through him, and it's the universe. It's
the state of flow.
It is.
Right? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So Mike, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us and with me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you taking the time and being patient while we figured out the schedule. So one last question I ask all my guests: who is someone that you know that I don't know, but that I should know?
I'm gonna say yours.
Sounds like Chris Hancock.
Chris Hancock is good. But my honest answer is yourself.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, the answer is you. Like there is nobody else you need to know but you. And none of us know. Like I did not have a clue who I was. I'm far more infinitely smarter, more powerful, more loving, more compassionate than I ever knew. And I'm figuring that out. And when I look around, that's the person we all need to get to know.
That's beautiful. Mike Wood, you're amazing.
Oh, you're kind. Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation. You're a very easy person to talk to. This has been fun.
Oh, likewise. You're the easiest. All right. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Well, oh my stars, Mike Wood. Wow. What a fantastic conversation. What an incredible man. Being able to tap into his own energy, to understand his own chakras and understand where they are and where he might draw energy from in certain situations. to have the presence of consciousness and mind to meditate deeply, to apply even the knowledge to box breathe, to move your brain from one side to the other to create that homeostasis. All that awareness, all that thought going into how he's living a life and managing his emotions and thinking about his emotions. And I love it that he wrote down the 180 plus imprints that he had to rewrite and to think about how he wanted to rethink those memories. And of course, applying some of what he's learned to his children. It's astonishing. So what did we learn from Mike? Well, I learned that I can do a much better job of naming my feelings, understanding my imprints, and practicing in ways to calm my mind and let the universe kind of flow through me. If anyone's ever read the Iliad, that's what Homer says in the opening stanzas. Muse, sing through me. Can you let the universe flow through you? Can you be aware enough to find that presence flowing through you so you act in accordance not only with the universe but your truest self? I challenge you to do that. Well, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I hope you visit menfolkjourneys.com, book a conversation. I'd love to have one with you so we can learn about your story too. Thank you so much for listening. Word bid Falared.